Welcome to the Business, Finance, and Comedy Show. I am a guy surrounded by money. Today I'm interviewing Dale L. Roberts, who has the Self-Publishing with Dale YouTube channel and podcast. Most self-publishers don't quit their job, but for those that do, what are the common things that you notice in terms of marketing or genre, etc.?
Ooh, man. I was one of those types of authors that left my job. My first paycheck came in 2014, shortly after I'd launched my first book. It was roughly $21 and some odd cents. And I thought that was enough proof of concept that I could just leave my job. I figured I can focus on it full time. I'd be okay to go. But as far as that working out, no, it didn't work out that well. In fact, I usually recommend to authors that they stick with their day job until you can start to build at least a part-time income more than the $21 that I'd made within a course of a month. You need more than 1 month of good income before you can consider leaving that job. So I would say is figure out what is it going to take to support yourself and then try to duplicate that at least 3 to 6 months straight before you decide to leave your job. Now, as far as the right niches to break into and the right genres, I always recommend that if you're getting to this business to make the money, figure out what it is that you enjoy most, identify those specific niches and see if there is a market there, if there is some type of proof of concept, meaning that you can make money there, and then go into it. Because the biggest problem is if you try to break into a niche that isn't very, you know, it's profitable, but it's not very interesting to you, it's going to become almost an albatross of sorts where you're going to be saddled with doing that all the time indefinitely until you pretty much otherwise burn out. So I recommend find the niches that you're most interested in, see if there's profitability, and then break into it. And of course, don't leave your day job unless you absolutely have to.
What side hustles would you suggest that authors can do which may enable them to work at home even if they don't work on their writing full time?
I like this one. This is one of my favorite questions right here, and not enough people ask this question. Yes. So when I did get out of my job, um, I immediately found out that, yeah, $20 doesn't pay the bills. So I did have to do a lot of side hustles. One of those included working with my wife. She had an Amazon FBA business, which is fulfilled by Amazon. And what we used to do was source products at different stores. So we would go into stores, find products that had a great amount of demand, and we would buy up the products, send them to Amazon. Amazon would sell them for us, and we would make the small profits that were remaining thereafter. That was a good side hustle. These days, it's a little bit more difficult. The other side hustle I would recommend is look into freelance websites. You're an author, you know how to write, you have a skill that nobody else has. There's some people, yeah, everybody can write to a certain extent, but if you're an author and you know that you can write, then write. You can practice your chops while people are paying you for that. So this could be things like ghostwriting. This could be things like editing, proofreading, even beta reading. You can go through sites like Fiverr. I made a lot of money on Fiverr. That stuff paid for a lot of my production for my books back then. And then take that money as well and paid my bills. So I was able to put food on the table. So I thank Fiverr a lot. There are other freelance websites, including the urbanwriters.com is pretty good. It's soon to be dibbly.com. Let's see here. Upwork is another option you can look into. There are so many. Just search up freelance websites and see exactly what's going to work with you. And if you have other, skills or talents outside of the world of writing, sure, you can go ahead and break into it. So if you're great at graphic design, maybe consider doing book cover design, doing promotional graphics and marketing for people. You can even become a social media manager if you know your way around social media enough. There are a lot of other authors out there that don't have the time, but do have the discretionary expense that would hire you. So then you could kind of learn by working with those specific authors and start to branch out and build your business. There's no end to side hustles. I mean, Etsy, eBay, you name it. It's just a case of just sitting down and figuring out, okay, what are my skills? and how can I be able to leverage those best so it doesn't take me away from my writing and publishing. That's why I lean towards saying writing is probably the best way to go, because then you're able to practice what you're doing and get better at that and get paid while you're doing it.
What about things like grants and crowdfunding to finance people's writing time? Should people bother looking into them?
Ooh, I like that. Yeah, grants. It's not something I've looked into too often. I ran into a couple of authors that were able to break into that, and I really wish I could be able to send your listeners in the right direction, but unfortunately, I don't know that I'd be the right person. But I would say crowdfunding is becoming bigger more than ever, because you look at sites like Kickstarter or Indiegogo, where there are authors that are just exploding right now. In fact, Kickstarter is right now on my roadmap. I'm looking at doing my own Kickstarter going into October. Now, as far as breaking into that and understanding it, it's going to take some time to research and figure out which authors are doing good at it. If you can find an author that's in the niche that you're writing that has successfully launched and fulfilled a campaign through Kickstarter or Indiegogo, study them. Figure out what was in their marketing copy, what were they offering, like what were the perks? So did it include ebooks? Did it include print books? What were the potential expenses that went behind that? And you just want to reverse engineer something like that. And is literally what I'm doing. And the other thing that I'm also doing is I've reached out to some authors who have successfully funded Kickstarter campaigns. And I'm actually asking them, like, hey, what do I need to do? How do I need to make it better? So what I need to do first is put together a pre-launch page, send it to them. They're going to evaluate it, and then I'll go ahead and tweak it from there. Thank goodness the Kickstarter is not until October. I still have plenty of time, although they're hassling me and I need to probably get on top of that like ASAP.
What forms of book marketing gives the best return on investment?
Best return on investment for book marketing and promotion. I really believe that a lot of people take for granted their ingenuity and their creativity of being an author. I mean, if you're in the business of being an author, you're a creative individual. So that's where you're going to want to tap into that before you tap into your bank. Yeah, it is a pay to play world. You will get better exposure and more exposure if you have a deeper pockets. But some of the best marketing and promotion comes from just free stuff, being very visible. So for instance, I'm here with you in this podcast, if you will, that I'm sharing some information and hopefully some people go, oh, this guy's an author. I'm going to go ahead and check out his books. It was 100% free. Although, I'm not sure if I still have to pay you, but nonetheless, it's a joke. It's a joke. Anybody's listening to this, I didn't have to pay a dime. There are many different podcasts. There's YouTube channels. There's influencers through Instagram or even TikTok that are going to be willing to do interviews 100% free. And usually in return, it's always the best idea to send more people to that direction to watch that interview and consume that content. So that way it's a little bit of a give and take relationship rather than just me taking from you. And there's that one way. You could always go and look into local media. Local news stations are always looking for something that's newsworthy. Did you win a book award? Did you just launch a book that has perfect timing? Let's say, I don't know, a holiday shopping guide you might have launched. That might be something good you can approach the local news about and say, hey, here's a great holiday shopping guide. Maybe we can fire off like an interview sometime around Black Friday. Go into it with the mindset of delivering value. It's not just about, let me promote my book. It's going to be, let me provide value for you. And then in exchange, you have that ability to become more visible. Great resource now that I'm thinking about it, because I'm just riffing here, I think is going to be a platform that's called podcastguests.com. They have a free service that they send out emails twice per week of podcasts looking for guests, and of course, guests looking for podcasts. It's 100% free. You can get the premium version. I got it some time ago and I didn't really notice any difference in doing so. But for the most part, I probably landed about a dozen different interviews through podcastguests.com. Shoo, marketing and promotion, some other ways. You've got social media. I recommend if you are an author start an email list. Getting an email list is absolutely critical to every author's career in this day and age. Some people will say email marketing is dead. They say that, they're either trying to mislead you or they're doing it wrong. Because the thing is, on platforms like, say, Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing, where you can publish for free, it's great. It's a low barrier of entry. The problem is if you just slightly misstep, they can terminate your account and then you're left without your readers. That email list is a way that you can take your readers with you. And the easiest way to build an email list, you can look into the free services, at least the free options of MailerLite, MailChimp, and ConvertKit. They all allow up to 1,000, and in instance of ConvertKit's 10,000 subscribers. That is free, that you can start to build that list through that way. You could just take that, build a landing page, get the URL or website link, and you're going to pop it into the front matter and the back matter of your book as a call to action, something super simple. And just so that everybody understands that this is not just some, kooky guy giving you some crazy outdated information. Traditional publishing companies currently leverage email marketing. You'll find a lot of TradPub books out there that have readers subscribing to email lists, so then they can broadcast emails to them. And in the event that there's a big sale coming or a discount or even a new book coming, they notify their audience. So if you're an indie author and you're self-publishing, email marketing, that's it. Now, as far as paid marketing goes, it just depends on where you're at. I'm a little preferential towards Amazon's platform because it's treated me really well. Amazon advertising has the best premium ads that you could possibly get because it is native advertising. You can pay as much as you want or as little as you want. I recommend, if you want to see some real good results, $10 per day is going to be at least the bargain basement amount. If you're not familiar with Amazon advertising, that's okay. Get into the Amazon advertising dashboard and you'll see in the top right-hand corner, there's a circle with a question mark in it, and it has training courses underneath it. It's all 100% free. You can even get yourself certified for it. And then you'll know your way really well around that. Again, $10 per day is more than sufficient. If you don't have that much, start it out about $1 per day and start to increase it as you start to make more money. Just reinvest those earnings back into it, and it will start to really take off. Is this something you're going to be able to learn and perfect overnight? No, I've been doing it for years now, and I'm far from perfect, but I'm at least turning a profit, and I'm very happy with the investment I'm putting into it.
Do you favor self-publishing over traditional publishing, and why if so?
Yes. Fun fact, I actually have a podcast called the Self-Publishing with Dale podcast, and it's for good reason because I am probably the biggest advocate for self-publishing. I'm not going to say that there's anything wrong with traditional publishing. There is many amazing pros and cons for both self-publishing and traditional publishing. The reason why I lean so much into self-publishing is for the independence. I don't want to answer to somebody. I left my day job to get away from bosses, from people telling me what I could or could not do. And that's the issue, is when you get into a traditional publishing deal, you're going to be making a fraction of what you would if you were a self-published indie author. Because I can't remember, and this is anecdotal, my apologies, but it's roughly less than 10% that you're going to make for every sale of your book. Whereas you look at something like most publishing platforms are going to pay anywhere from 35% to 70% per sale of your book. I like that bigger number. It makes me feel warm. It makes me feel fuzzy. I'm excited about that. I wouldn't feel excited about a traditional publishing deal that fences me in. Sure, you might get in advance. That's nice. It's great. It looks good in your bank account initially. But then when that dries up, hopefully you've got another deal that you can be able to fire off another book and another book and another book. But the thing is, traditional publishing moves slow. There's many working elements to it because you're dealing with an entire company that has a marketer there, a cover designer there, an editing team. You have the publicity team. There's so many aspects, and not to mention that you have to put it through the filter of them. So where you want the direction of your book to go is not necessarily going to match every time with how the traditional publishing company is going to want to go. As a self-published author, you can be able to do that. Now, with all that being said, self-publishing does come with its cons. Yeah, You got that independence, but you also wear all those hats that a traditional publishing company has. And that includes marketing and promotion. You got to pay for everything. You got to do the publicity. You got to hire out a cover designer. You got to get an editor, things like that. And it does become a bit overwhelming. What I would recommend is if you're an author and one path or the other makes sense to you, go with it. I don't want to ever make it seem like I'm anti-traditional publishing. It is a good avenue and it's the right avenue for some authors. But for authors like me, the type A personalities, it's a perfect fit.
Do you have some ideas on saving money on editing and graphic designers?
Oh, yes. You're talking to Mr. Cheapskate over here. If I could be able to save a little money, I definitely will. And that comes, I think, from a lot of just the early days of me doing this over 10 years ago and just having to pay for ramen noodles and vegetables. But, as far as saving money on editing, the very first thing I would say is if there's anywhere that I would recommend that you don't pinch too much pennies on, it is editing. If you can afford it, hire a professional editor. But let's just say, for instance, you have absolutely no money. You have nothing, no money to spare whatsoever. And you're like, Dale, I can't afford this whatsoever. That's fine. There are so many other authors in your position. So rather than try to self-edit your stuff by using like, I don't know, Microsoft Editor, Grammarly, ProWriting 8, all that type of stuff, and maybe even AI to clean it up, I would recommend that you reach out to other authors. You need to get involved in different forums or communities. Like, for instance, I have a Discord community with about nearly 1,000 authors. And I always recommend, like, if you can't afford an editor, work with another author. It's bonus points if you can find an author within your niche, because then they're familiar and they can fact check some stuff or even call you on specific tropes that you should probably be embracing or not embracing if you're in the fiction niche. So work with other authors. Never try to edit all of it on your own because you're going to be biased. It is your creation. So every now and then you're going to miss things. You will definitely miss things. Even with a professional editor, you will miss some things, but at least it's a lot more refined than if you do it on your own. So that's probably the best way to go through editing. I would say the next phase of getting it edited down is if you do have an email list and you do have a readership, lean on them for beta reading, meaning that you give them a semi-raw copy of your book. In other words, it's been edited a little bit, but you give that to them to get feedback from them. And I typically like to work with about 1 to 3 beta readers. You don't want to get it too messy because otherwise there's too many cooks in the kitchen. And then last but not least, you have the advanced reader copy team, which is the team of people that you give them an advanced copy, the final, as close to final draft as possible, in exchange for them to post a review. They inevitably will point out typos, mistakes, grammar errors, things like that. Those mistakes that you thought was getting cleaned up inside the editing, they're going to get that last little thing. Now, as far as graphic design goes, whew, this is rough. And I hate giving this advice, but I'm going to give it nonetheless. You're just going to have to learn how to do it. You'll have to get different software out there. There's free ones. Like, for instance, I got really good at GIMP, which is GNU Image Manipulation Program. You can find it online. It's open source software. I've been using it for years. In fact, I tried switching to Photoshop, which has a monthly fee. And I just was like, I can do GIMP so much better. I got really good at it and I still use it to this day because, well, I just canceled Photoshop because I was like, I got to learn a whole new thing. But GIMP's a good one. Photopea is like an online alternative to Photoshop, so it has a lot of similarities to Photoshop in that regard. There are also places you can do, like they already have templates, like Canva's good. BookBrush is another good one. They both have free plans you can dip into. But the issue you're going to run into is if you're not familiar with graphic design and putting together a good cover design, sometimes it's going actually a lot of the time it's going to look ugly when it first comes out. And this is where I say lean on a community of authors or even your readership to share your cover, get honest feedback, try to implement those tips into making your cover better, and then you're good to go. But with graphic design, I would say if you do have the discretionary expense, boy, you pick 2 really good ones in editing and graphic design. But if If you had to spend any money anywhere, those are the two ones that I try to recommend. Save up the money, hire a good professional cover designer if you can afford it. By the way, you can get cheap cover designs for like $5 over on Fiverr. You can get $10 over on Get Covers to as much as $1,000 or more, depending on where you're going. But if you're working on a fixed budget, look at Fiverr, look at Get Covers. They are dirt cheap and it'll save you hours of banging your head against the wall trying to figure out the best graphic design. And it's on the cheap for sure. And I would recommend, again, lean on other authors because sometimes you're going to find some great ideas and some resourceful authors out there that are willing to share some of their tips for saving that money. Get yourself into a good forum or community with other authors and ask them that question because you'll be able to do so much more than what I've just shared within this interview.
Some of my books are released under pen names. What are your best tips for promoting books under pen names?
Ooh, man. It's tough because obviously with a pen name, you're trying to maintain anonymity. So getting interviews is going to be a tall ask, obviously. But one of the areas you could probably do is audio podcasting only. And I mean, probably doing podcast interviews and you just lay the groundwork ahead of time and letting them know, like, hey, this is what we're working with. Is this going to be okay with you? Now, it may not be practical for you, but for some authors, it could work out really well. Just tell them, hey, I don't have any working camera, or you can even just be honest with them. Say, I like to maintain my anonymity and I'm happy to speak with you. Now, if for some reason interviews make you, nervous, anxious, drives up your anxiety and stress, then definitely don't go for it. I will tell you that I get nervous with every interview. Heck, before I jumped on here, I was nervous. It happens. I'm an introvert, so it's almost always exhausting for me, but I do know that there's a huge benefit in me becoming more visible. But as far as a pen name goes, this is where you're going to need to be relying a lot on your email list, especially leaning heavily into building an email list, because then you can stay behind the comforts of your keyboard. Nobody will ever know. Now, see, my wife and I built a number of pen names back early in my career around 2014 to 2016. And that was how I was able to manage that anonymity, was through an email list where I was able to continue to build that. If it were me these days, what I would do is I'd continue building an email list. I would start a website and a supporting blog if I could. I would also start a social media like presence, and this wouldn't be everywhere. I would just choose one spot. It could be Twitter or X. It could be Facebook. It could be Instagram if I wanted to. You don't always have to show pictures of yourself. It could be pictures of the characters within your novel. It could be pictures of your book itself, any number of those things. Just be very creative and resourceful with what you have and then work from there. But the strongest asset, as I said before, is that email list. Lean into that. And now the next thing is to build that email list even more, reach out to other authors within your niche to do newsletter swaps, because then that other author is going to be able to send you readers that would appreciate yours, and you in return will do the same for them. If I haven't expressed it enough, email marketing is absolutely critical that authors should break into that. You could skip social media. You can skip doing paid advertisements. But one of the things I think that you shouldn't skip is building a good email list with that pen name. So that way you can continue to grow and nurture that audience. And as each publication fires off, that audience is going to just swell and start bursting at the seams. And then before you know it, there's going to be people wondering, I wonder what this person looks like. I wonder what they're like. And well, you have to cross that bridge once it gets to that position. And that's probably a good thing. And you'd probably go ahead and fix that when it comes.
Aside from writing a good book, what are some ways of getting some good reviews?
Definitely the email list. I keep tapping into that, but it's true. Ask your audience. One of the best ways to do it is ask within the confines of your book. I put it at the end. There are some authors that will put it at the beginning of their books. To me, that seems backwards, and this is just my opinion. I feel like if you're asking at the beginning of the book to review your book now, it's almost the equivalent of a waitress coming up, just first meeting you and be like, hey, I need a tip. No, you're not going to get a tip. You need to give me service first. So anybody outside the United States is probably like, why would you do that? But either way, you could put it at the front matter, but I always prefer the back matter of the book. Typically, right after the end, I will go ahead and put that ask in there. The founder of AppSumo, Noah Kagan, more recently had launched a book called Million Dollar Weekend. And within the book, I would say it was about a third of the way through. It was real good. Great read, by the way. Fantastic. And it was a third of the way in the book and was like, hey, you've read most of this stuff right now, and I've provided some great value. If you feel like it's been great value, it would mean the world to me if you went and left a review. I was like, there we go. That's what I'm talking about right there. That was smart. That was very good. So there's nothing that's off the table when it comes to requesting those reviews. What I would recommend, though, is remove the friction because you can go asking for a review doesn't necessarily mean people are going to do it because on a lot of instances, some people have this really large task in mind in order to leave a review. Like, oh, I got to leave a thoughtful review. I don't want to do it now. Let me do it later. So at the very minimum, places like Goodreads or even Amazon both have the ratings available. So even asking for a simple thing like, hey, could you just pop in a rating? And if you have a little bit of extra time, it would mean the world to me if you left an honest review at this. And you would provide them with the link to wherever your book is, wherever it's could be Amazon, could be Goodreads, it could be Kobo. It doesn't matter. Just focus on the area in which you want to drive the most reviews. Now, my recommendation is if Amazon is the place, focus on Amazon. Now, there's a number of ways that you can create universal review links and such, but it has so much mechanics in it that I can't verbally be able to express it. So I've got a ton of YouTube videos that share that. And in fact, about a week or two ago, I shared how to do universal review links. It's dead simple. That way, when somebody sees that link, they click on it, it'll send them on over to Amazon and their region specific area, and then they can post a rating or the review.
How do you properly do a book launch?
Man, doing a book launch, I don't think there's any one proper way to do it. There's going to be so many opinions that's going to vary. Um, and it comes down to who the audience is, if you've got a large readership and whatnot. But if you're a new author, what I would recommend is just take your time. Gosh, I seem like a broken record. My apologies that I do, but you build an email list. How would you build the email list without a book? This is going to sound like it's going to be a lot of work initially, but put together what's called a reader magnet. Get something that is going to be relevant to your niche. So let's say, for instance, my fitness books. Back in the day, I had a reader magnet that was the top 10 fitness tools to lose weight and feel great. And that one brought in thousands upon thousands of emails. And what you would do is take that reader magnet, publish it wherever you can. Put it out there. You can do it for free if you wanted to. You can do it on social media. You can do it through an email list. You can do it through any number of things and just drive traffic over there. So you build that readership. And then from that readership, give yourself enough runway that you can request for people to post reviews as part of an advanced reader copy team. Not everybody's going to take you up on it. Not everybody's going to open up your email. So just be prepared for that. And then even then, when they accept that advanced reader copy, I've found that by and large, it's about 30% will actually leave a rating or review upon launch day. So that's probably one of the key ideas. Get it also into your workflow that you start building out a lot of the marketing and promotion before that book launches. There's a lot of authors out there that publish and pray for the best. And the problem is, some people are successful, whereas a large majority of people are unsuccessful because you just can't simply rely on any one platform to drive sales for you. You've got to do it. You have to put in the time. It could be something as simple as being on social media, do a cover reveal party or something. You could probably tease it a little bit for a couple of weeks and then reveal the cover and everybody feels invested. Heck, you can have 3 cover iterations and have people vote for it. So then they become invested in this particular publication that you're going to launch it. There are other ways that you can, really get it in there. I would say landing interviews, build awareness of that. So I mentioned before on how to get interviews. So let's just tap back into that. All you got to do is get out there and make sure that in each interview that you're saying, hey, my latest book is self-publishing for new authors. Go pick it up. It's at every, fine retailer. And by the way, that was a horrible plug, but nonetheless, you get the idea in that going on these interviews, you want to build that awareness and build that hype. Think about some of the movies that you're really excited about. For instance, right now, Deadpool and Wolverine has just been huge, but it's been huge for months. And both Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman have been doing the circuit. They've been getting out there. They've been doing all the different interviews, and they've done videos, they've done teasers, they've done guest appearances. Think like a movie star. Think like a movie company. How can I be able to put myself out there and build hype for this publication? So when it finally does launch, boom, it explodes.
How many books have you written and in what genres?
Oh man. This is one of those questions I almost always can't give you an accurate idea, but I've done over 50 different health and fitness books, and that was between 2014 and 2018. I mean, I was churning out one after the other, after the other, after the other, because I was just literally just living, breathing, eating everything there was to this business. And any chance I could, I would put out a publication. With the more recent books added to it, I'm somewhere probably closer to like 70 publications. So I can't give an exact number precisely, but somewhere around 70. I have delisted a lot of the fitness books because I felt like there was a certain amount of redundancy, and some of them needed some extensive work and such. So if you were ever to go look it up and go, oh, he doesn't have 50 publications anymore on there, it's for good reason. It's because some of those I feel needed a much needed overhaul, that they needed to be improved. Now, as far as, producing those, it took a lot of time. And I found that the longer I've been in this business, the more I've realized that you should go at your own speed. Don't try to duplicate someone like me. If you see that I've got this large backlog of books and go, oh my gosh, well, he said he just did 50 books within like a 4-year span. Like, I'm going to try that too. Quality versus quantity. That's the most important thing. It's better that you have 6 high quality publications than 50 okay publications.
How much time do you spend writing a typical book?
Huh. It will take me about roughly a month. Roughly a month. If I stay focused, I can get it done within a couple of weeks. This just depends on the word count. So, for instance, with my latest publication, Self-Publishing for New Authors, I wrote that in 2 weeks and during National Novel Writing Month in 2021. And because I was on a roll, I ended up writing the sequel to that, which was Advanced Self-Publishing for Authors. I finished that up within about a week and a half. So I still had some time to spare. And I started writing a book about Amazon advertising. So by the time 2021 was done, I had like 4 publications because they ended up doing an additional one beyond that. But I've also proven too on my YouTube channel, I did a couple of different challenges. One of the challenges was, can I write a book in 7 days on my iPhone 7? Yeah, I own an iPhone 7. I have the discretionary expense to upgrade, but I like it. I'm kind of, it's nostalgic for me. I really love using it. So I ended up using that to write an entire book, which was called Networking for Authors. I did it within 7 days. It was tough. It's not easy writing a book on a phone, on a smartphone, much less an old, antiquated one as well. But I do know a lot of authors that have been successful in doing that. And so when I got done with that specific test, and I think that particular publication had somewhere like 25,000 to 30,000 words. It could have been more. I know it wasn't less for sure, but I was able to do that. That's a relatively short read. You're looking at roughly about 150 to 170 pages altogether. Now, the second test I did was, could I write a book in 24 hours? Now, I have done that before. I did that with what's the book that's called Amazon Keywords for Books. And in that specific book, I did 18,000 words within 11 hours, and I did it all live on YouTube in front of a live audience and people just watching me as I'm going through and doing this. very nerve-wracking. It's a fun process, but again, very stressful. So I wanted to see if I could do something greater than that, something bigger than 18,000, something that has a lot more meat on the bones. So that's where I sat down and I wrote, you ready for this? This is probably the most meta of things that you can think of. I wrote a book called How to Write a Nonfiction Book in 24 Hours. Yeah, I wrote a nonfiction book about how to write a nonfiction book in 24 hours, and I did it in 24 hours. I would not recommend doing that. It is really, really tough. I think at the end of the day, I ended up with about 30,000 words, give or take maybe a few thousand. It could have been closer to 40,000 words, but it was a tough undertaking. No less, it was very stressful because I was putting that clock on myself. And I thought, how appropriate would it be if I failed at writing a nonfiction book in 24 hours? But I succeeded. I had, I think, maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours to spare. I had very little sleep. I mean, I stayed up through the night. I don't drink caffeine because that's just not something I do. And it was tough. If I were to recommend to any author out there that's listening to this, is experiment, challenge yourself, take your time and craft the best book that you can. But also remember this, when you're writing your book, you have full permission to write hammered garbage on your first draft. No one's going to read it. No one should read it beyond an editor or yourself. Just write it down, because the thing is, you can't edit a blank page, but you can edit hammered garbage and make it much better, make it more refined, and make it nice. So I would say my advice to people out there is find your voice, find the pace in which you can go, and then stick with it and try to improve with every single time that you sit down to write.
You review a lot of platforms on your channel. What do you use for your main books?
Oh, I do a lot of platforms and I have a lot of great relationships with some of these self-publishing companies. They're fantastic. I lean heavily on Amazon KDP because Amazon is going to bring in a lion's share of the publication profits. And I'm just going to have to be anecdotal at this point, and I don't have the source that I could cite on this one, but I think it was between 60 to 70% of global publication profits online are derived from Amazon. So not being on it is working at a greater disadvantage. So that's why I typically lean on Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing. And it's something I also recommend other authors at least consider. If you're anti-Amazon though, hey, don't go for it. That's fine. You don't have to be romantic about this business. There are many alternatives out there. And I just recommend at least trying it. And if you're a new author, going on Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing, or KDP as I will call it, is the path of least resistance. There's so much free information out there. Not only does KDP provide a free course for you called KDP Jumpstart, but you can go onto YouTube. I have 1,600 videos between two YouTube channels, and a good amount of them are about Amazon KDP. Think about that, and then add to the fact that there are other creators just like me putting out content about Kindle Direct Publishing. You've got many forums and you have many authors that you're able to give some feedback to each other, share just a little bit more about the business, some tips, tricks, and things like that, that we will be able to get more discovered on Amazon's platform. But I lean heavily on Amazon. But if there's one personal preference that I always have, is getting my book into libraries. And getting libraries, you can use a service called Overdrive by way of a company called Kobo Writing Life, or Draft2Digital. Draft2Digital is fantastic. They have many options out there to reach into libraries. Sure, you're not making as much per sale through a library, but to me, I feel like you're hitting a different audience with different needs. And in a lot of instances, if you really wow a library patron, chances are very likely they're just going to go and buy your book. So you've just essentially double dipped. But that's a personal preference of mine. I want my books in libraries. Some people don't want them in libraries. They only want them to be over on Amazon's platform, and that's totally fine.
I don't know if you get a lot of emails from struggling authors, but what are the most frequent thing they struggle with both during and after they've written the books?
Oh, wow. Yes, I get dozens every week. Dozens of emails every week. I get a lot of direct messages via social media. And inevitably, I almost always will answer at least one question for somebody. And almost all of the questions are centered around sales. A lot of authors have the issue of like, hey, I've published this book 3 months ago and I have zero sales. And so inevitably I have to say, okay, what have you done so far? Could you give me a link to your product page? Let me take a look at it and I can hopefully help you and give you my opinion to the situation. And I find 9 times out of 10, the reason for the lack of sales is they have three of their elements completely out of place. Their cover design is no good. I'm sorry. Customers will judge your book by its cover. It's just a fact. It's no offense. There is a fraction of readers out there, yes, they'll just be forgiving and they'll go, well, that seems like an interesting concept. I'm going to go ahead and read it. But those are the outliers. So it's the book cover design. Getting a professional cover design makes all the difference. The next barrier of entry is going to be the book description. I call that marketing copy. A lot of times, book descriptions, writers will write a book description like they wrote their book. That doesn't work. It really doesn't. You can't write a synopsis or a summary of your book because that's not enough to entice them. Think about all of the products that you are served on television and magazine and newspapers and ads. They don't give you summaries or synopsises. Synopsises. I don't know if that's synopsi. I'm not really sure if that's right, but they give you marketing copy. They give you a compelling reason to part ways with your time, or more importantly, your money, in order to get their product. So you need to dial in that book description so it sells people and it doesn't just tell people what is going to be in there. I see that far too often. And the other thing is, get an editor for your book description. It is so vital, because if you have even one slight typo or a mistake inside your book description, how likely do you think it is that someone is going to go and buy your book? You've already proven to them that you're not writing good enough. What makes you think that they're going to invest money? There's a lot of instances that I see those book descriptions. It's not just that it's a summary or synopsis. It's that it's poorly written. It's poorly edited. That is to be treated just like the interior of your book. But in marketing copy, you want to make sure that it's fully edited, that it makes sense, that it's coherent. And then last but not least is getting it to where you are identifying your target audience, your ideal reader, if you will, because in that book description, you need to be able to appeal to that reader. And so that means you're going to need to do market research before you publish your book. Figure out your readers' pain points. What are some of the things they like? What are some of the things they dislike? You have to be able to address those things. And you need to make sure there's proof of concept. Is there an audience even in there? If you're doing underwater basket weaving for dolphins and there's like no readers there, don't be surprised if you don't get very many sales. I'm very realistic in that the niche that I'm publishing in for self-publishing education, it's not very big. It's not $1 million book business. Could you make it that way? Sure, with a good back end. But on the front end of things, it's not that popular that people are just flying off the shelves, go ahead and buying those things. So I'm realistic in the volume of book sales that I get through my niche. So that means that you need to do the market research, figure out the niche that you're breaking into is going to be worthwhile. Don't put the cart in front of the horse. You write the book and then do the market research. You're going to end up being screwed if you find out that there's absolutely no one interested in this. And yeah, sure, a good marketing plan with a deep budget might be able to serve that out to an audience who might pick up your book. But a good indicator of the market wanting that is the bestseller lists. Go into the bestseller lists and see if there are books that are selling within your niche. If they're selling a significant volume, then you're onto something. If not, well, I mean, it's probably realistic that if you've got a great book cover design, you've got excellent marketing copy, and you're still not making sales, then chances are very likely there's no market demand.
Are there any common scams in the self-publishing industry that people need to watch out for?
Yes, there are way too many. And I'm going to go ahead and just give you a very popular one. You will see this typically in direct messages on places like Facebook or Twitter, or even in your email inbox. If a company is cold prospecting you to pay for reviews or to put your book in front of their audience, it's not the right company. It really isn't. Good companies don't need to cold prospect. So let me give you a for example. There is an excellent premium book marketing company called BookBub. That's book last name BUB. BookBub, fantastic. It's really good. It is like the gold standard within the indie author community and beyond. I think even TradPub probably leans on it as well. And if you can land a featured deal through them, it's a significant amount and it feeds it out to as many people as possible. What you won't see is BookBub dropping you DMs or sending you emails without you, first of all, subscribing to their email newsletter. They're not going to come over with hat in hand saying, hey, we're going to be able to sell your book. And this can also be said for any time you get scam calls. Oh my gosh, if a company calls up and finds your number, first of all, how did they find your number? It's pretty wild, right? That's another deal for another day. I'll tell you, look at white pages, block your name from there. That's going to be one of the things I'll tell you because there are people that just investigate where they can find specific authors through white pages or other companies like that. And then they will go ahead and attach that to the book and they'll go and cold prospect. Anybody that cold prospects via phone, hang up, block them. Don't even bother with the remove me from your list because I will tell you, they're not going to remove you from any list. They're going to continue to hound you and try to sell you their garbage services. Cold prospecting, there's just no place within this business for something like that. A good company doesn't need to cold prospect. They are waiting for people to come in. BookBub is waiting for people to come to them, not the other way around. But that's one main scam is always keep your guard up. If you ever feel like, ooh, it's too good to be true, it probably is. And if you don't trust your intuition or your gut instinct, share it with another author. Say, hey, I got this opportunity. Someone dropped something in my email inbox. It sounds like it's an awesome opportunity. Get a few opinions because maybe, just maybe, it might be a good service. But I'm going to tell you 99.9% of the time, it probably isn't if it's cold prospecting because they're not going to spend their time that type of marketing. Those companies will typically pour their money into ad spend through platforms like Google or YouTube or Facebook or even X, in any number of those things, or even just like BookBub where they just sit and wait for authors to come over and shower money upon them. That's just how it works. But yeah, keep your guard up. And actually, let me give you two great resources. One great resource is called Writer Beware. I believe it might be at writerbeware.org. You can always just Google it up. Victoria Strauss is one of the best folks out there that's shining a light on all of the various scams within the publishing business. And that's not just regarding self-publishing, but it's in trad publishing as well. Read that site, cross-check anything that you come across with her website because she's going to be able to give you everything you need to know about these scams and how you can avoid them. Another great resource is called the Alliance of Independent Authors. They are a nonprofit organization that is run by indie authors for indie authors out of the United Kingdom. And they have a list that's called the Watchdog List. And they will specifically go through and vet different products, services, and companies. And they will give them a rating, everything from avoid to caution to recommended. And this is good because it will help you understand what other authors can know, like, and trust out there without feeling like you're going to be scammed. If you ever feel, like I said, anything's too good to be true, then it probably is. Question it, push back, and just know that you're not alone. And if you've ever been scammed before, make sure you share it with other authors. I know it seems embarrassing. It's very humbling. I got screwed over one time buying a fake ISBN when I first broke into this business. And it hurt. It sucked. I was out $50 with a useless ISBN. So sharing it with other authors are going to prevent other authors from getting burned. And in turn, that goodwill is going to come back to you because another author is going to go, you know what? Actually, I had X, Y, and Z happen to me. You should watch out for that. We got to work together as authors because there are a lot of scammers out there that prey on the authors that are solo, that are working on their own, that they're in their own little bubble, and they hope that you will not talk to other authors, that you will not investigate their services, that you will not question their services. But yeah, be careful out there, folks. Take care of each other.
Apparently people would buy thousands of their own books to get on the bestseller lists. Have you seen any other similar shady tactics in the publishing industry?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I had someone reach out to me about this, speaking of scams and such. This is true actually. And I hate to throw his name out there, but I'm just going to say it anyways. Very, very well respected author until probably last year, and that's another story for another day. Mark Dawson had actually publicly shared on his podcast. This has been a few years ago, maybe a couple years, that he wanted to specifically make it onto a bestseller list over in the UK. So he ended up buying copies of his book to send to his readers in the US because they were waiting to get copies. Now, yeah, he was at least helping his readers, but he also was very forthcoming and saying like, I'm just going to hit the bestsellers list by doing this massive order. Yeah, he got a little bit of backlash. He got a little bit of some flack from the author community. I was willing to forgive that because I did see the means to the end that he had on something like this. But you get with companies, for instance, I had a virtual assistant reach out to me a number of years ago that wanted me to work with their company to promote it over through my YouTube channel. And the gentleman was super nice as any virtual assistant could be. And he brought the name up, and I don't want to mention this name, and I couldn't even be able to remember it fully. But the service was you could spend upwards of $25,000 to make the bestseller lists on, I think, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, USA Today. And what they would do would be they take a good chunk of that money and they would buy bulk of the books from various locations throughout the world, physical brick and mortar locations, because that's how a lot of these bestseller lists are getting the reported, sales is through brick and mortar stores. And so if you just try to do it through Amazon, it's not effective. But if you go through brick and mortar, oh yeah, absolutely. It's going to get reported to those bestseller lists. So what they would do is they would split up this massive order. That way it wouldn't set off any alarms. Because if you ever notice inside a bestseller list, a cross, kind of like a Christian cross on the bestseller there, that typically means that bulk was bought somewhere for this. And so that's the bestseller list's way of saying, hey, this might have come through a big bulk order. So some authors don't mind it. They just want to be on the bestseller list and say, hey, I'm a Wall Street Journal bestselling author. Is it legit? Well, that's certainly debatable. And if you're hiring a service for $25,000 to get that placement, I hope you enjoy it. Because I'm going to tell you that in a lot of instances, when you're spending that type of money, you're gambling. Could you sell more books by being listed on that bestseller list? Possibly, maybe not. I think that that's way too much of a gamble, not to mention it's a little shady. So I would say just be very careful. Now, that's not to say that you can't go out and buy bulk of your book. I would recommend that whoever you distribute through, buy it wholesale through them. Or if you're buying like one or two books like I do, I love to use Amazon Prime. So I'll just order one or two books for myself that I can keep on hand. And I don't need to worry about going through the wholesale copies, and I don't get the Prime shipping and things like that. It's not to game the system. I don't care about that rank on Amazon. All I care is about getting my book within a couple of days, not waiting a couple of weeks to get my books in the mail. So just think about that and what resonates most with you. At the end of the day, you have to answer to the person that you're facing in the mirror. And if you're okay with gaming the system, if you're okay with plunking down thousands of dollars to get this, I don't know, this award that is kind of a flash in the pan. I mean, sure, you can go the rest of your life saying you're a USA Today bestseller, but were you really? I mean, you paid for a service that gamed the system. I mean, if you feel okay with that, go ahead and knock yourself out. Chances are very likely we're probably not going to be very good friends, but that's okay. You got to answer to yourself at the very end of the day. So just be very careful about trying to game the system just so you can have that bestseller tag. I will wrap up this particular question here with something my wife had told me a long time ago. And when I became an Amazon bestseller, and now this was pretty remarkable because I was in the fitness niche. And this was 2016 when I really first broke out. Like 2014, I broke into it. For 2 years, I struggled. 2016, I got my breakthrough success, and it really started to just ramp up after that. But when I got that bestseller status, I share with my wife, I'm like, hey, I became an Amazon bestseller. Isn't that awesome? Number one, number one. And this was really good ranking. We're talking like top 3,000 books within all of Amazon, which I was super proud of. And she was like, that's great. Do you get paid more? I'm like, no, but I mean, it puts me in a good placement. She's like, okay, so how many more sales have you had since becoming the bestseller? And I was like, well, I don't know. She got me. Being a best-selling author is great. It sounds beautiful. It's good to say at a cocktail party and brag about with other people, maybe put on the back flap of your book in your bio. But does it pay the bills? Yeah, it's great for marketing, but does it pay the bills? And that's really what you need to come down to. If you're in this business to make money and make a living at it, and you know, think about that. I'm not discouraging you from calling yourself a best-selling author, but in the same instance, you have to say at the end of the day, does it really matter?
I see all these people promoting the idea of making thousands with low content books. Do you personally know people who do well with this model, and what do you think of the model overall?
You're gonna find some really good information here on this one here. So I'd actually heard about low content books. We actually called them no content books back in about 2015 to 2016. And it was kind of just it was a whisper within the community because not many people realized, like, is this okay? Are we breaking any rules? Like, is because it was nuts. You could literally put a blank journal through CreateSpace back at the time that would distribute to Amazon, and you would profit thousands upon thousands of dollars. It was stupid. It was it was crazy. I was beside myself a lot of times. And it really started ramping up in 2016 to 2017. And I mean, we're talking, I put out some really dumb no content books and low content books, but the customers loved them. Now, no content books typically are diaries, journals, notebooks. Low content books, you're looking at something with a bit more substance. It could be activity books, it could be a workbook, it could be like a fitness journal of some sort, any of those type of things that has a bit more substance, a little more meat on the bones. Um, it was lucrative back then, but here's the problem is the cat got let out of the bag. Now, the only reason why I never shared any of this information was one, I felt like I was in danger, like I was going to get in trouble for doing something like this. Two, a lot of the people were like, don't say anything because the problem is as soon as you get it out, that's going to water down the amount that you're actually going to profit from. Well, you go into about 2017, 2018, the cat was let out the bag, and then everyone and their mother was talking about on YouTube, and they're sharing all the tips, tactics, and all those type of things. Can you make money in low content books today? Yes. Is it as easy as it once was? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It still requires the same marketing and promotional efforts that you would put into a normal written book like fiction or nonfiction. It's just a fact. Now, there are some outliers out there that really profit hand over fist. I've interviewed a couple of people that continue to make a substantial living, anywhere from about 5 figures to 6 figures per month. It's ridiculous. But they also have a good marketing plan. They also know their market. They also have built a brand that people can come to time and again. This is not a easy business. Wherever your entry point is, it's not something simple. It's not just printing money. And if you believe a YouTuber is telling you all the truth, chances are they're missing some items. Like, what did they spend on marketing? What did they spend on putting together the book? What were some of the insights that they have into that niche? What were the keywords that they leveraged and such? And I'll tell you this, we're in the day and age right now that anybody can fake a paycheck, that they can literally do screenshots. It's simple. You can go into inspect source on your KDP dashboard and you can finagle those numbers and snap that shot and share it with people and go, hey, look at this. I made $20,000 from low content books. Be skeptical for those type of things. Be skeptical for those type of channels that tell you that self-publishing is going to be as lucrative as it is. It is work. it is going to require time. It is going to require patience, and it's going to require that you learn and iterate and grow as you get into this business. Now, I will tell you that low content books bore the heck out of me these days. It's just boring to me. I got into this business because I love writing nonfiction and fiction books. It is something that is true to my heart and true to my passion. And while low content books and no content books treated me well when they did, I will tell you these days, the amount of money that I make from it is not quite what it used to be. I make far more through fiction and nonfiction, and it's a lot more of a sustainable amount of income versus the low content and no content because it is, I hate using this word, saturated. There are so many competitors that are within that space that you're having to fight for that position. And then you got a lot of just copycats out there aping the competition. They'll see, oh, well, this book's over here about my diamond encrusted journal. I'm going to go ahead and do one just like it. And sometimes they're doing pixel for pixel copying of these low content books in hopes to go ahead and take profits from this other person. It's very cutthroat and it sucks. And it's still just obnoxiously boring. Now, if you for some reason hear this and you go, Dale, you're wrong. Maybe I am. Maybe I am. There are instances, there are outliers, there are some instances that it does work. So, for instance, I could probably put a workbook out for my latest book, Self Publishing for New Authors. That would be a great low content book because it is an accompaniment to a current book that's out in the market. I didn't do that, by the way. There's no accompanying workbook, but to say that I could still be able to build more with low content books, you could still do that. It is still very possible. But again, it's not going to be as easy as some of these YouTubers say. And this is one of the things that I've always been very straightforward and transparent about on my YouTube channel is I tell people facts. I try to tell them, look, it's not as easy as you would think it is. Yes, this YouTuber is going to show you it. Well, maybe they did get some success. Maybe they did crush it, but you don't have the same experience and the same insights and the same intuition as that YouTuber. As much as they would try to train you and teach you that, it's still going to come with your own filter, your own experiences, your own skill sets that could mire that information that you bring in from them about how to publish low content books and make money hand over fist.
What do you think of people wanting to use AI to write books? Do you think that the books would be good, and is this even viable?
I used to be on the fence about a lot of things. I was on the other side of the fence when it came to writing entire books with AI. The reason being is I love the craft of writing. But then I took a step back and I realized that there are some people out there that don't have the skill sets that I do, that they don't have the resources that I do, that they really want to get into this business. And at the end of the day, if a reader is happy, does it really matter where it's coming from? I mean, as long as it's not being plagiarized, as long as someone's not stealing from another person, I think we're good to go. As far as artificial intelligence writing an entire book, I think that the books that AI are that artificial intelligence is creating still requires what I call human intervention. You might be able to write an entire book with AI. AI could do the entire thing. But that's not to say that you should take that book and immediately publish it to the market. I've seen some real stinkers out there. Problem is artificial intelligence is not perfect. It's not going to give you the best facts if you're doing a nonfiction book. It's not going to give you the best tropes or character arcs that, say, a human would. That's why you need to have intervention. You need to get in there with a human editor that's going to be able to clean this up. One of the things I've discovered with artificial intelligence is that the generative AI feeds out a lot of flowery prose, just words that no one really ever uses, or a sequence of words, or just a lengthy sentence. I'm like, who says that? You need to get in there and you have to put some fingerprints in there. You need to go in and create some human touch. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there that are very against artificial intelligence, and I understand, because the way that the large language models were trained was with copywritten books and without permission. And that sucks. And I'm sure that that's all going to get sorted out in the courts. But in the interim, This tool is available for you to leverage. You either don't leverage it or you do. If you're against it, that's totally fine. But I would recommend that you think about more about how can I leverage artificial intelligence in my business to make me more efficient. So, for instance, um, I'm not going to write a book with artificial intelligence for myself. My work, I feel like there's a unique voice that comes from me that artificial intelligence won't be able to duplicate. But in the same instance, I can be able to take an artificial intelligence book and I can reword it, shake it up, make it a little bit more readable. So that way, at the end of the day, the customer, the consumer is happy with what they have. And if you want to disclose it and you feel like you're obligated to do that and the platform requires that you disclose it, then disclose it. Because I've read a few books written with artificial intelligence, and because they went through that filter of editing like everybody else does, it reads fine. I'm entertained. I got my money's worth. I'm happy with it. And that's really what it comes down to at the end of the day. Now, you're welcome to disagree with me. That's totally fine. I am okay with that. But I mean, this is where I'm at, and this is how I feel about things. And until otherwise, I would say for now, be very cautious about how you leverage artificial intelligence for writing entire books. Again, human intervention is critical.
Why did you start a YouTube channel about self-publishing?
I had an interview, two interviews to be exact, on YouTube in January 2016. This was when I had my breakthrough success, breaking into the fitness genre and really just coming up to the top. I mean, it's super competitive if you're not familiar. Health and fitness is just, it's tough to break in there. So it was really cool that that happened. So I had two different YouTube hosts that reached out to me and said, "Hey, we'd love to interview you. We want to learn a little bit more about your brand. How did you get to that position?" I had no plans of hitting YouTube. I think I did like YouTube to like show some workouts every now and then, but I had no grand plan of becoming this YouTuber. It was nothing big to me. But the problem was, as soon as I did those interviews, I got flooded with emails and direct messages. And the problem was, it was taking me away from my writing and publishing. So it was slowing down my breakneck schedule because at that point, that was when I was like working on 50 freaking books. And so rather than be short with these people, because I really have a heart, a service minded heart that I really want to help people, I thought to myself, okay, if someone asks a question, let me shoot a quick video. I'll upload it to YouTube and it'll help more people. That way, if I ever get another email, I can go, "Hey, check out this video. It answers your question." Little did I know that within the course of a year, I would actually love YouTube. I enjoyed it. I started to become obsessed with it. I started drawing parallels between self-publishing books and self-publishing videos through YouTube. And I started to kind of understand, like, oh my gosh, this is like this in this regard, like keywords, niche research, market research, understanding your audience, seeing exactly how you could be able to make this better. So, yeah, I fell into it by accident, to be honest. And I think it was by mid 2017, I finally committed myself to it. I said, I am going to make this work. All of 2018, I put my publishing business on hold with the exception of, a couple little publications here and there, and as well as marketing and promotion through Amazon advertising. But I said, I'm going to focus 100% on YouTube. And I think somewhere around that time, I hit 10,000 subscribers, which was a huge milestone. I think they said there was a stat that was shared with me once before that only 1% of YouTubers ever hit above 10,000 subscribers. You fast forward to now, and I'm right at the precipice of 100,000 subscribers, getting what we call the silver play button. And it is really cool. I love this business as much as I love the business of writing and self-publishing. Like 50-50, it is something I really thoroughly enjoy. Will I be at YouTube forever? I doubt it. I doubt it. It's as time goes on, I realize that my heart draws me over to writing and publishing, and eventually I just want to retire without having a camera stuffed in my face. As I've shared before, I'm a bit of an introvert. I do these interviews and I do these videos and I get out there visually because I know that it benefits my brand and I can get more sales of my books and get more of an audience and a readership and a viewership by being visible. But eventually, I just want to retire get behind an old quiet deluxe typewriter and then just churn out manuscript after manuscript, until the day that I die. And I highly doubt I'll ever retire from writing, but for now, the videos are fun. I anticipate it'll probably be in my life for at least the next 10 years or so.
Where can people follow you?
Best places to follow me is going to be on YouTube. You can find me at Dale L. Roberts, or you can even look up the Self Publishing with Dale podcast. If you can't remember either one of those things, go visit my website over at selfpublishingwithdale.com. Again, that's selfpublishingwithdale.com.
I would like to thank Dale for the interview. People watching can like, comment, share, subscribe and whatever else you do to videos if you're watching in the future. If you don't find notifications annoying, you can turn notifications on.